this lesson, we're going to look at the song Mutt by Blink-182. This is a request. The request was referring to the hi-hat breakdown in the middle, but I think the groove in this song is quite interesting. So I'm going to cover the intro, fill, the main verse groove, some of the rhythmic ideas used in fills in the rest of the song. So with those you should be able to figure out pretty much what's going on and have some fun with it yourself. Let's start with the verse groove. It's fast eighth notes on the hi-hat, so if you have trouble with this, I would just work on that by itself before moving on to anything else. So basically you need to be able to play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and at a pretty decent speed on the hi-hat and feel comfortable with this. I'd suggest working on the wrist and not going for too much kind of up and down motion, because you want these to be consistent sounding hi-hat notes. So practice putting the bass drum on the 1 and in bar 1 and the 1 and the 3 and in bar 2, and just repeat that. So that would sound like this. And you want to get that up to speed, something like this. Then the next thing you can do is add the at the end of the second bar. So 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and a 1 and 2, and repeat that. 3, 4. So once you're comfortable with that, then we can start adding the hi-hat lifts, which is what makes the rest of this pattern. So to clue you in, bar 2, when we play it, there is no bass drum in it at all. We're just going to accent 1 and 3 and on the hi-hat. So I'm going to do this in 2-bar phrases, so bars 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and 7 and 8. Bars 1 and 2, it's 1 and on the bass drum, no bass drums in the second bar, but accent the 1 and the 3 and on the hi-hat. Okay, one more time. Bars 3 and 4. Bar 3 is the same as bar 1, so just 1 and on the kick. Bar 4 is what we were doing before. That's 1 and 3 and on the bass drum, and then the on the hi-hat. So bars 3 and 4 you've already worked on. In bars 5 and 6 we start to add hi-hat lifts. Bar 7 and 8, by the way, is the same as bar 3 and 4, so we've only got 2 bars to go. In bar 5 we have a hi-hat lift on the backbeat on 2, and it stays open and it closes on beat 3. So beat 2 you're only playing a quarter note with the right hand. So it's going to be 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and. One more time. And up to speed. And then bar 6 is the same as bar 2, so that's no bass drums, accenting the 1 and the 3 and, but this time we're also going to add open hi-hats on the and of 1 and the and of 3. So that'd be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And when you're practicing this, you want to make sure that you're closing the hi-hat at the same time that you're hitting it with your hand, so that you don't get kind of flams. You want those to come together. So if you think of it as 4 2-bar phrases, the first 2-bar phrase is just bass drum on the 1 and the and, no bass drums in the second bar. Second 2-bar phrase starts off the same, 1 and on the bass drum, but the second half is 1 and 3 and on the bass drum with the little twiddly 16th note at the end. And then you repeat that 4-bar phrase, but you add the hi-hat lifts. So the whole thing together at a slow speed sounds like this. So it's kind of like a question and answer thing. It's like bars 3 and 4 are answering bars 1 and 2 because the bass drum's mimicking what the hi-hat did with the accents. And then the same thing happens with 5, 6, 7 and 8, but this time they're like an answer to bars 1, 2, 3 and 4 because we're playing the same thing but with some open hi-hats in it. So it's a nicely constructed groove. It's got some good kind of musical elements to it. You might want to steal some things like putting those hi-hat lifts in. That's something that I can't think I've come across before. And the accented hi-hats, you know, to make up part of a groove is also a nice thing. So it's a good groove he's got going on here. So you want to work on that at a slow tempo and then gradually build it up until you get to the tempo on the record, which is something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll next talk about the intro fill because it sounds a little bit backwards to me because of where the snare hits come in. I'm assuming that the YouTube clip that I listened to isn't missing a drum off the beginning. I'm sure someone will comment if that's the case. But basically it's 8th notes with 1 16th note put in there. So if I give you the fill as 8th notes, it's floor, snare, kick, tom, 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 floor, snare. So the fill with the 16th note added, the 16th note happens on this tom and it's on the A of 2. So we've got floor, snare, kick, and a 3 and 4 and. One more time. And up to speed, that sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4.